Hello and welcome to the Art Costume Podcast. I'm Elizabeth Joy Glass.
And I am Spencer number one. You could just call me Spencer Williams, though.
I will.
I don't believe there's any clones of me just yet. And
not
if there
yet.
Are, they're not killing it.
Unless you're a part of like a secret Orphan Black project, but you haven't watched that yet.
I haven't. Wrong title for today.
Never
Elizabeth.
mind. Never mind, Spencer.
Elizabeth, a constant cursor in the Art of Costume podcast has always been our love for Robert Pattinson. Yes. We've done a Batman episode.
Yes.
We've done 2 Twilight episodes.
We have.
About the same Twilight movie.
We have. We actually have done 2 Twilight.
And now today we are getting a whole batch of Robert Pattinson's. Today we are watching Bong Joon Ho's new film, Mickey 17. I'm so excited to get into it. I'm so
excited. This was so much fun.
It was so much fun. We went to the good old theaters because we believe in seeing films like this on the big screen.
If you can.
We went with my new favorite best friends, Chloe and Jonathan.
Yeah.
We got to hang out with them and just sit back and watch some good old fashioned kooky cinema with a crap ton of Robert Pattinsons. And it was
fun.
It was fantastic.
A fun sci-fi thriller.
Yeah. And comedy and satire and tragedy, all the things. It was great.
It was everything.
Did you ever see Parasite?
No, I haven't.
You got to.
I know.
So this is Bong Joon Ho's first film since he got the Oscar for Parasite. So the shackles have been removed.
I know.
He now feels like he could just put out some fun, great content, and he's doing a great job. He's killing it.
He took advantage fully.
Yeah. This is what happens when you win an Oscar. You get to come up with all your fun ideas. Elizabeth, let's get into it.
Absolutely.
So this film was directed, of course, by Bong Joon Ho, and Mickey 17 is about a disposable employee who is sent on a human expedition to colonize the ice world of Niflheim. After one iteration dies, a new body is regenerated with most of his memories intact. However, upon his return, he discovers that a replacement has already been created, leading to a forbidden coexistence of duplicates that threatens mission stability. And that is Mickey 17.
Go see this movie. Yeah. It is so much fun. Like, it's been a long time, I feel like, especially since I've gone to the theaters and just seen like a fun movie.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
It's fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously, which is important. But like it made you think too, at the same time. Yeah. I remember going home that night and just being like, what just happened?
What did I just see? It's like, I don't think I've been this critical of a new film in like a long time. Just not in a bad way, just like thinking about it and like what I thought about it. And it had so much like blockbuster energy like that I remember from like the 2000s. Like it gave that, and it looked so incredible.
Yeah.
Let's meet the costume designer, Catherine George. You'll know her work from We Need to Talk About Kevin, Snowpiercer, Okja, the pilot episode of Succession. Great work to set up an amazing
fantastic work.
Show. And The Dead Don't Die.
Yeah. Catherine George has worked with Bong Joon Ho on both Snowpiercer and Okja, so she is definitely someone who's I mean, I'm sure she was surprised on what she got herself into this time around, but she's definitely used to the antics.
Absolutely. And I love like a director and a costume designer pairing where it's like, okay, the costume designer understands how the director thinks. Yeah. And the director clearly fully loves and appreciates the costume designer's process and vision.
It just makes it excited too, because like all the great things they're going to do together. Like you think of like the Colleen Atwoods with Tim Burton and the Sandy Powells with Martin Scorsese. And then you got like Kate Hawley of Guillermo del Toro. Look out for this power duo right here between Catherine George and Bong Joon Ho, because they're going to do a lot more great stuff.
I think that.
Elizabeth, Dan, and I made a pact that we were just going to really try to kick up the behind the costume facts as much as we possible for all of our episodes. So I literally created a full-on little Bible of all these facts. So.
You sent us a picture in our group chat of that, and I was like, oh, Spencer went all in.
We're going hard. Let's take a little break, and then we're going to get into it. We have good stuff. We have quotes from Robert Pattinson himself, Mark Ruffalo, Bong Joon Ho, and of course, costume designer Catherine George. So let's get into it right after this break.
Hi, I'm Dan, who does all the magic behind the scenes. I wanted to say thank you, and if you want to support the show even farther, go to tpublic.com/user/theartofcostume, where you can buy a couple variations of our logo on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. Also, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're an audio listener, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Now, back to the show.
Spencer, are you ready to get into the sci-fi film of the year, Mickey 17?
Yeah.
It's my sci-fi film of the year, at least.
I'm trying to think what's coming out this year, and you might be right.
I think I'm right. I totally think I'm right.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And you and I were just talking, right before the break on how we really went home just thinking about this film a lot and like what was it saying. I mean, it was saying a lot of different themes on why it was so in ways very campy and over the top, but still so impactful. And what it was saying. And director Bong Joon Ho actually was asked that question in the press side of this film. A lot of our behind the costume facts today are brought to you by Warner Brothers Studios, giving us words directly from the stars themselves. So very appreciative of that. So Bong Joon Ho was asked, why do you think Mickey 17 resonates with people? And he very correctly said, first of all, Robert Pattinson is a very charming actor. So I think that's why people are interested. And I'm not joking.
He knew who he was casting.
Yeah, he said, I know what I'm doing. He says, we really see a new side of him in this film, a side we've never seen from him. And that naturally blends with the film's story and theme. It's one of the best parts. This is a sci-fi film, but it's also a comedy and a very human story. So I hope the audience enjoys it for what it is. And then when they go home after watching it, I hope they spend a brief moment thinking about what makes us human, what we must do to stay human. Just briefly, 3 minutes maybe.
He was like, think about it. Not too hard, but think about it.
You're like, look, I totally get that this is a Robert Pattinson, beautiful vanity project that we all love. But also, there's some very serious underlying tones there if you're like open to receiving them.
Yeah. Especially like when we look at, especially with AI, all the technology that's potentially ahead of us.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what do we as humans, what do we hold on to?
Right. It was very much like, yes, you can have a good time, but just know that we're going to be having these conversations a lot more. So this was like a nice dip your toes in the existentialism of the future, because the future is coming real quick. We also talked about how Bong Joon Ho has worked with Catherine George, the costume designer, quite before. He didn't get to talk about the relationship a lot, but what he did say was costume designer Catherine George, she's a longtime colleague. We did Snowpiercer and Okja together. She has her own unique approach and understanding characters. So it's always a joy to see all the costumes she comes up with, which I thought was just a nice and very sweet message. He definitely respects the craft, and I believe that he just knows that he can trust her to take it away and do great work and bring her own vision to it. So I'm excited to see what they do.
Me too.
Going forward. Well, let's start to break it down. So this is a film that takes place in the future, right? This, in quotes, the future. It looks different every sci-fi film we talk about.
Every sci-fi film looks so different. I liked that it was like a near future, because it was like all the look of it, everything was very familiar, but you're like, okay, I can see like that being what fashion is in 25 years.
Right. It felt very realistic. It felt like this this is like a natural progression of where society is going.
Yeah.
There wasn't, of course, like we see like the creeper creatures and all that, which feels very over the top in sci-fi. But like when they're actually on the ship, there's nothing about it that makes you feel like this isn't like an attainable society.
Yeah.
And that's something that Catherine George really spoke to on Predicting the Future. She said, predicting the future and looking at past movies that have tried to do that, it's always tricky. It's a big risk. You can get elements of it right, but really no one is expecting you to predict the future. The more we talked about it, and each time I showed director Bong research of anything futuristic, he reacted against it. The deeper we got into prep, the more it became apparent that he wanted a more utilitarian, much more industrial and dirtier world rooted in reality. I could see how the production design was going at the same time, and we came upon this idea to expose the inner mechanisms like they had done in the workings of the ship, the inside on the outside, that nothing's really covered up. It's all practical. That became the theme throughout the costumes of the crew's workwear. And I love that. Because like I said, it just feels very practical. You know, they're not walking around with like light up Tron suits and magical helmets. They're like, you know, even the like spacesuit that Mickey's wearing just feels like, oh, that's like an astronaut suit.
Yeah, it's very familiar, but it's streamlined.
Yeah.
Like Mickey's spacesuit, if you put that on, you know, the Apollo mission astronauts, you would be like, something's wrong, but you wouldn't you wouldn't like notice it right away because it's a little streamlined. Everything's like just a little bit smoother, but it's like, oh yeah, no, that's a spacesuit.
Yeah,
you could see it being worn today.
Yeah. One thing I love about this too was, okay, one of my favorite films in the 80s is The Thing, John Carpenter's film, because it's another like film that takes place in a very Arctic world.
I've never seen it, and I really want to.
I'm not surprised you have not seen The Thing. I didn't even ask you because I knew you hadn't seen it.
Yeah, this is a movie I do actually really want to see.
It's great. It's the perfect horror film, but it's also like I don't think it's supposed to be futuristic, but it's really the same idea. And then I was like, oh man, like this feels so inspired by The Thing. And then turns out director Bong Joon Ho has a museum exhibition opening up at the Academy Museum very soon. And it's all about his inspirations in filmmaking. And guess what film they are screening?
The Thing.
The Thing. Bong Joon Ho is then going to do a Q&A after with director John Carpenter about how The Thing has been an inspiration for him.
That's so exciting.
I thought, I was like, oh, well, duh. Like, this is the vibe that they were looking for in terms of the costumes. It was not like sparkly, you know, The Fifth Element type sci-fi. Yeah. This is very much like these are working people, working class, working on the ship and doing hard, odd jobs. If you're Mickey 17, it's a little bit, different story. You're definitely doing odder jobs. But these are just real people living in a very chaotic society.
And I love wild sci-fi. Yeah. I love thinking of the distant future and what it's going to be. But we're coming to like a time in history where like a lot of these, like, especially like 70s, 80s, like sci-fi movies and shows, they were predicting, oh, what's it going to be like in the 2020s? Right. And like the closer we get to like what people have already predicted, I'm like, okay, like that's not where it's going. Yeah. So I love something like Mickey 17 where it's like, okay, I can see that future for us.
Yeah, it's really interesting. They've seen like a perspective shift, you know, like I just watched Blade Runner 2049 the other day. It's very much like, oh, we're all going to have like our cool, hot AI girlfriend and flying cars and whatnot. and now that we're seeing like the reveal of the Cybertruck and everyone's like, I don't want this.
Like,
so,
no.
Like the perspective is changing actively in front of us. But let's get back to Mickey and the many Mickeys that we love. So Robert Pattinson talked about this character. I think it's important before we get into their costume. Robert was asked, who is Mickey? And Robert said, Mickey is a deceptively complicated character. At first glance, he kind of seems like a sort of simpleton, but he's not. He has quite specific desires. He's quite innocent and naive in lots of ways. He comes from a place of extreme hurt. He's trying to deal with a lot of trauma, but manifests itself looking quite silly to other people. but it's not silly to him. It does read sort of innately comedic and very heightened to me, which I think speaks a lot to this character and the many changes you see him go through. But the brief, though, given to Catherine George in terms of the character and what he would look like, Bong Joon Ho's brief for the character of Mickey was to have him look vulnerable and a bit of a loser. Mickey has several key looks. His expendable uniform is very much like a prison suit.
Yeah.
Totally practical and very utilitarian. Did I get it right that time?
Utilitarian. Yeah.
I know that's one of those words.
How is that something I know how to say? But
that word
don't?
does not register in my brain, with the exception of several. Okay, but it's totally practical. And with the exception of several openings and access points with magnet fastenings, which allowed the lab team to get to him quickly to inject or experiment on him.
I love that.
There is even a butt flap, which emphasizes his vulnerability and adds to his embarrassment. The scanning suit is based on a cooling garment that astronauts wear inside their suits. The thin tubing across the entire suit exposes the mechanisms. The thermal suit has the same technology with the heating cables visible on the outside of the suit. This is based on a high altitude vintage military suit, which is also a heated garment. So like they kind of mentioned, everything on the inside is on the outside.
I like that.
And very kind of spooky too, you know?
Yeah.
Like you're seeing this, it is funny. You're like, okay, yeah, Mickey, he's kind of like a quirky guy.
Yeah, he's very goofy.
He's very goofy, but then the costumes kind of lead you to feel sad for him because he's always like connected to some sort of tubing or butt flaps and ready to be injected.
Tricked into dying.
Yeah, so it's you see this beautiful smiling face as Robert Pattinson, but he's just in this like uniform all the time that's weighing him down and saying like, oh man, like this guy's a quick access type costume where they could inject him with some disease within the next 2 minutes if they wanted to. It's very kind of depressing.
It is.
Catherine George spoke about working on the character Mickey. She said Mickey's clothing is issued for expendables, and basically it's disposable. It's totally practical and extremely utilitarian.
You're doing great, Spencer.
Why is that word in every single quote?
Because it's a look.
Yeah, it's a lot of openings and access points. We use magnets quite a lot on his clothing. They can get to him easily through his uniform and just basically pull the sleeves apart for injections, experiments. And of course, it was director Bong who requested the addition of the butt flap, making him even more vulnerable. So he was like, call a meeting. We need a butt flap on this suit if you want to keep your job. And everyone's like, yes, sir.
Like, I love the idea of him, and Catherine being in a fitting with Robert Pattinson. Robert Pattinson has it on. And he's just like, I really like it. I love the concept. It's looking good. Can we add a butt flap to Robert turnaround? Can we?
Because it takes like the embarrassment of like wearing like like the gown at the hospital.
Yeah,
that's like kind of what they're going through. Is like they're giving him this very disposable uniform that they just have access to him at all time. There's a lot of dark storytelling happening in the costumes that I think a lot of people might not see right away. I think a big part of this film, though, is like the sets and the setting. It really like speaks to the mood just as much as the costumes. The production notes said, working with Bong Joon Ho, the director of photography, Darius Kanji, and costume designer Catherine George, together, all of them developed a color stacking system, which they used across the sets and costumes. The color palette was very tightly calibrated so that costumes are often similar shades to interiors, with lighting being the emphasis on these colors. Gray on gray in the cafeteria, cycling corridors, a striking contrast to the pinks and gold in Marshall and Ylfa's room and their wardrobe, and burgundy against burgundy in the committee room chairs and carpet and in members' clothes. So everything was very uniform.
Yeah.
That had a serious system.
Yeah, they did. I love that. And it now that like I know that, I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like it was very monochromatic. Lighting was something they used a lot in this film to get things across.
Man, even just looking at the pictures behind us, it's like they could blending into their environment at all times, because they're just, a lot of these characters are kind of just being looked at as property essentially on this ship. They might not think that, but like they're just numbers, you know, to Marshall and just his idea of repopulating this planet
in his image.
Yeah, nasty. So they're all just very much kind of blended in because there's no individuality on this ship, which is another quite unsettling detail. I didn't really have a fact, but I just want to say that Robert Pattinson just looks good in a knitted turtleneck.
Those last scenes.
Yeah.
He looks so good.
Yeah, like the typical Robert Pattinson side part comes through.
His jawline's right there.
I asked you in the last episode, what's better than one Robert Pattinson, but multiple Robert Pattinsons. You have to be wondering, how were they able to get two Robert Pattinsons on screen? It kind of breaks my brain thinking about it. Well, it really came down first to the costume and the makeup. So Robert said when it came to differentiating Mickey 17 and Mickey 18, it actually really started with the voice. That's where it began.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, which we noticed. I remember you and I talking about it in the lobby of the theaters. He said, I came to London a few months before it started and experimented with so many different voices for both of them. It was a strange thing because you're playing two characters who have had to be very much delineated, but at the same time, no one else can tell that they're actually different. It's a delicate line to walk and it's incredibly complicated. But I started out doing an extremely different performance than when we did the read-through. Bong came up to me and said, that voice you're doing, don't do that. And I was like, okay, dropping it now. Then the makeup department came up with these cheeks because Bong initially wanted 18 to have chubby cheeks. So experimented with all these cheek plumpers, which we were just talking about this on the Godfather episode, which I never would have thought of in a million years. And then it ended up just being a snaggletooth. We made it so small and it slightly tilted my face. I thought, that's just enough. You just have basically nothing. You can't tell that anything's really even there. Then it made me speak differently, which made me walk differently, which made me behave differently. Just having a little tiny tooth in. So tons of experiments. And it looks like a shadow self could come from having a snaggletooth. So it was just that little snaggletooth. And eventually they burn his face too. So that's a great way to differentiate. But it's very subtle.
It is. It's very subtle. It works perfect. Mm-hmm. And props to the visual effects team, layering them in, because so many movies and shows do this, have actors playing against themselves. I don't think I've seen it done so seamlessly, though. Right.
Yeah, it's very seamlessly. And to that point, when it comes to the twinning, various techniques are used to achieve Robert Pattinson playing alongside himself. Of course, Robert Pattinson does such a great job playing both Mickey 17 and 18. But, and to that point, in almost every instance, he was filmed playing both roles using a quick switch with double Sam Woodhams, who also plays another character in the film, just like one of the crew members. So that as many variables as possible. And of course, lighting and general camera movements helped kind of cut the camera in between these characters, so then he was almost able to like switch to a different camera angle. In a more straightforward situations, VFX split screen to two takes together in the case of more complex camera movements or those with a high degree of interaction between the two. So like I said, they used the double and then they would swap the face or sometimes the whole head and hair. So there's a lot going on. Essentially. VFX were like, woof.
They were like, let's go.
This was... You know, it was pretty sweaty in that department.
They had a couple months of late nights.
All right. Another character that I loved was Nasha.
Nasha was great.
Played by the great Naomi Ackie, who I must say is not in as many films as I would like her to be.
This is true.
She's very... I don't think I've seen her since... she was in one of the Star Wars films, one of the very late...
I think the very last one?
Yeah, which I haven't seen since it was in the theaters.
Same. I don't think I've seen her in anything else since then.
She was in Zoe Kravitz's director debut last year, Channing Tatum.
That, no.
Me neither. But she was fantastic in this. And Naomi spoke about her costume and working with Catherine George. She said, I felt really cool in my costume. As soon as we finished the final fitting and I had my little leg strap gun holster, I was like, okay, this is a cool lady. I was walking in a different way. It gave me a bit of swagger. Our costumes are so indicative of who we are and what we're representing in this. What I found was that playing against what the costume is supposed to evoke was fun. I think there's something that could be easily said about someone like Nasha, or she could just be the kick-ass serious woman who goes around and is like, you're doing this wrong, and halt. When actually there are many moments we found where she's very silly. She's not really following the rules, quite teenage in her response to things. And doing all of that while being in a very cool security army suit is a nice contrast, which I
agree.
didn't think of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. It's true. She looks like the most professional, serious person on the ship. But at the same time, she's like, I'm going to hook up with two Mickeys.
Two Mickeys. I mean, you can't blame the girl.
There was no blame pointed from anyone in that theater.
No. The only person who was upset was Mickey 17.
yeah, honestly. But yeah, she's very buttoned up.
Yeah.
But just also very quirky too.
Yeah. I love what she says about like responding like a teenager, because she's definitely that like overly accomplished kid in high school, but who is constantly getting in trouble because they opened their mouth to complain about something. And though it was a valid complaint, the adults were still like, no, go to the principal's office.
She's dressed like a full-on member of the military.
Yeah.
All right. We got to talk about Mark Ruffalo and this very bone-chilling performance he does of Kenneth Marshall.
Because Mark Ruffalo is such a cutie.
Yeah.
And then he plays this disgusting individual.
I think this is kind of like his new vibe that he's enjoying, because he also played that very scary character in Poor Things. Like, he's just having a good time playing unlikable characters. Because like you said, he is a very likable cutie character guy in every film. But this one, it's like, so before we get into the costume, Mark Ruffalo said about finding Kenneth Marshall, it was a struggle to pin him down at first. There's a nod to cult-like political figures, but Bong told me, I want him to be more insecure, a third-rater. He's a failed politician with a small following, sent away on a barely functional ship. The church company doesn't really value him. He has this evangelical charisma, but never reaches true cult leader status, which makes him funnier, more vulnerable, and ironically still dangerous. He's also a total narcissist, constantly making everything about himself. His dynamic with his wife, Ylfa, played by amazing Toni Collette, is hilarious. He's like a needy little boy, always checking in. How am I doing? Should I be stronger? Should I tune it down? On top of that, his whole look, his hair, the teeth I had made, it just adds to the absurdity. And I think that's right on.
Yeah.
That's his character down to the T. So Catherine George, the costume designer, talked about differentiating Marshall and Ylfa, who is played by Toni Collette. She said, Marshall's really a combination of many elements of current and past world leaders. In research, we built up a board of different looks, and then we sort of honed in on extreme looks and characteristics. In actuality, he's a failed leader. He didn't succeed on Earth and is going on this mission, and he uses that as his tool to try and be powerful. He's greedy and he's ostentatious, and that all comes across in his wardrobe. But also, as a failure, so he doesn't quite get it right. He tries to entertain, but not in the best way. It's quite cheesy. On the other hand, Ylfa, his wife, is very supportive of him. She tries to be the first lady. She tries to make herself likable to the crew and to the agents. She wears a lot of pink in her apartment. She's surrounded herself in pink and gold and black. They look completely out of place on the ship. They're the type of leaders who are just out of touch with what's going on around them, and it's evident just looking at them.
Yes.
Chef's kiss.
Absolutely. I loved their dynamic because it gave very she's the power behind the man. Mm-hmm. And if she was with someone who was a little more charming, they probably would have been successful on Earth.
Right.
Because she definitely knows how to direct somebody.
Yeah.
It was giving very much like Ronald Reagan and his wife, because she was apparently a power behind his political desires and achievements.
Right.
So I loved that. I love when they like would go down to the crew. They definitely tried to like tone it down a little bit to fit in the way they thought they would. But then like every time you see them in their apartments, it's like, oh my gosh, what are you people doing?
Right. It's like the typical story of like you go to the crew and they all have to like fight for their rations of food and get to their Dolores Umbridge-esque apartment.
Yes.
And they're just having like big old grand meals. Toni Collette's character is just very obsessed with like juicing, like
sauces. It was gross.
Yeah, like all sorts of weird stuff, and they're always like wrapped in like satins and velvets, which I thought was just fantastic because they kind of see themselves as like the superstars on the ship, which they totally are. I mean, he's like running his own like little goofy,
like this was all
TV
his idea.
Series.
Yeah.
But in fact, it's just a bunch of dorks following the lead dorks.
Yeah.
And they totally put up with it because they look up to them.
Yeah.
It is. I like how they all kind of talked about how he's like the failed cult leader, but there's a little bit of success there.
Yeah.
It's giving lizard people go to space.
Yes. Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo talked about his costume. He said, Catherine George's costume reinforced this. The followers are uniform, gray, stripped of individuality, while Marshall and Ylfa are flamboyant, draped in loud colors and bizarre fashion. And then there's Sharon Martin's hair and makeup. We were joking around and I said, I'm thinking about teeth. And she immediately went, oh my God, me too. We landed on these unnaturally perfect, chiclet-like bonded teeth, too flawless to be real. And Marshall has this nighttime show, so add the tan, contouring, and thick TV makeup. Does it sound familiar?
Yeah.
It's all so extreme and amazingly ridiculous. Even my hair was at first. I have 3 hairstyles in this movie. In 10 films, I've basically had like the same hair, and now I get 3. Pair that with Catherine's costumes, his casual kimono in their gilded apartment, his button-down political suit, and his military commander look. It's also detailed and exaggerated. The contrast between the elite and everyone else is striking, and it speaks volumes. I really think that's like the heart of this film, honestly, is like that right there, that conversation.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of like a Bong Joon Ho specialty, honestly. It's like talking about the separation of classes and capitalism. And, we could go into a whole rabbit hole on all the themes.
We could. We absolutely could.
I love that Mark Ruffalo loved his costume so much, too. You could tell he had fun with this one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I love seeing actors when they play a character you're not used to seeing them play.
Yeah.
And you can tell they're like just having the time of their life.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Ruffalo in Mickey 17 and in Poor Things.
Yeah.
You can tell he's just having so much fun. Then Denzel Washington in Gladiator 2.
Yeah, there you
I'm
go.
like, actors are like breaking out of their boxes and they are loving it. And I love to see that.
Yeah. We're trying new things.
Yeah.
And it pays off most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely paid off with Mickey 17. Toni Collette talked about bringing her character to life. And she really gave tribute to all of the crew who really made her character come to life. She said, I was certainly helped by everybody else's input into the character. That often happens. Hair, makeup, costume, seeing our set. I remember walking into a room and going, we have pink fur stairs. It was just outrageous. All these people were able to bring very little on the spaceship, but these two brought everything but the kitchen sink. They're just so self-serving. So she very much gave tribute to it was all about the costume, the hair, makeup. And Toni Collette gives a very Toni Collette-esque performance, I think, which is so fun. And she's like, the costume just helped bring that person to life.
She's also like a little bit scary though.
She's probably the scariest person on this ship.
Yeah.
It's like that nice lady at the supermarket that's a little too nice, and you're like, she's probably gonna kill me if I cut her in line.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
She reminds me a lot of our nice little wife from our last episode, Peaky Blinders. She was giving that that fascist wife in the last season.
Oh, yeah.
Just way too spooky and unsettling.
Yeah.
Wearing a yellow pussy bow at the same time, too.
I loved how she was like matching his uniform, which I actually did really like his military uniform.
Yeah,
I was like, you absolutely commissioned a costume designer to like design this before you left Earth.
Yeah, the whole thing is like all of their costumes are great costumes. Like they do have a great sense of style. It's just the way they do it compared to like when you compare them to all the crew, it's what makes it so cringy.
And like the way everyone's like passively brainwashed. Yeah. It's like, oh.
Another big aspect, we've been talking about the elite, but then there's also the crew. And Catherine George talked about the uniform. She said, we distinguish between the looks for the crew and the agents. The agents, they wear tactical vests based on modern police uniforms. We want them to look quite powerful. There's a fabric called spacer, which is the bulletproof material in these vests, but we decided to leave it exposed like all the other elements. So again, it's a lot of exposed. It almost kind of has like a Star Wars Imperial look, but they're basing this on like modern police uniforms too, which again, we're talking about how it's a futuristic, but they're pulling from modern time.
Yeah. I like that. They did look very streamlined, utilitarian.
Nice.
You could really, thank you. You could really see those elements in the crew, in the agents.
Mm-hmm.
It just looked so good.
Yeah. I feel like I would want to be a police officer on this ship compared to all the other jobs.
Yeah, they seem to have it the best.
They do, because I mean, how much crime is really happening on this ship?
Probably not too much.
Until there's like a
drug deal.
A drug deal or a giant space rock that has some aliens in it. Another character I want to bring up, I don't really have a facts on, but Steven Yeun, who plays Timo. I just want to say,
man,
as someone who's watched The Walking Dead, since episode 1 when he was like a little baby, I'm proud of him. He's just killing it. He's doing great work.
He really is. Every time I see him something, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at you go.
It's like seeing your friend from like elementary school, like killing it, because he's just come such a long way. I mean, he's always been fantastic.
Yeah.
He's great in this film. He's also like kind of like your jerk friend who you kind of like remember from high school for being a jerk, and you run into them later on in life and like, oh gosh, this guy.
And they pull you into something.
He's wearing like the sunglasses, the aviators, and he thinks very highly of himself, but you just kind of can't help but like get involved.
Just nice enough.
Yeah.
Just nice enough to pull you in.
Right. And then you're like, oh, maybe we are friends. And then you're at the bottom of an icy cavern and they're like, well,
bye. Yeah. See you in your new body. Yeah. And I really liked his character because he was wearing everything everyone else wore.
Yeah.
But it always looked just like a little bit cooler.
He had like a Top Gun quality to him. Which he does like fly one of the ships, so that makes sense. But yeah, he has like an aviator look to him. It's just slightly different enough to be like the aviator. I don't think this would be done without talking about the cute creepers.
Yeah.
The little spooky creatures on this ice planet. So visual effects had worked up some of the key creeper moments and movements very early in the process for the puppeteer team. I love a puppet. So of course, lots of visual effects. That definitely did happen. But some of them were created with puppets. So the VFX were done so they could understand intent and the movement, and then they would rehearse and mimic that accordingly with puppets. So the puppeteer team worked with different types of puppets to accommodate the varying size of the creepers. 3 puppeteers skillfully operated the mama creeper, with the head puppeteer wearing a chest rig to assist with the weight of the puppet head.
My God.
The mama creeper puppet was made by the team's accomplished collaborators using stitches and glue, and was assembled using a variety of materials. So I hope that ends up in the Academy Museum in the exhibit.
Oh my gosh. Because maybe this is just because I feel like through our lives, we've really seen an evolution of visual effects.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is one of the first movies I've seen that is heavy on visual effects.
Yeah.
There's a lot. It looks so natural, even with these made up creatures. And I'm like, that makes so much sense that they were puppets.
Yeah.
They look so real.
It's just like, to me, I just have so much respect for like a filmmaker who still will never forget like the practical elements to make it feel realistic. Where of course there was like a million creepers by the end, so visual effects came in eventually, and that's cool. You know, that's all right.
And I think when visual effects uses practical and computer generated, I feel like that's when it always looks its best. Mm-hmm. And they did an incredible job with the creepers.
You and I in the lobby right after, we were both like, ugh, we need a plush version of the creeper.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was like, well, if there is one, we'll order like 10 of them just for this podcast episode to have on the couch. Unfortunately, they're not available yet, but they do exist because I found pictures of the cast with the creeper plusher, but unfortunately I think it's only available in Korea. But there are websites where you can order them, but I believe they're scam websites, people, so do not fall for those. It is not available. Just wait until the film distributor or Warner Brothers is like, here, get your official one. Don't buy something just by Googling.
Creeper plushies. I bet that was like the cast gift at the wrap party, and everybody was probably so excited to get one.
Yeah, I get it. The temptation is real, and I bet you it is coming.
I hope so.
Because I want a couple.
I want one.
And that actually brings us to the end of Mickey 17. Short and sweet. I had such a good time with this film.
Same.
It was fun.
Me too.
It felt like a nice, especially after doing a whole month of like mobster whacking people and fascism and, and, you know, fedoras and flat caps. It was nice to leave planet Earth for a little bit.
It was good to like a good sci-fi romp, if you will.
Yeah.
It was fun.
So, Elizabeth, what was your Stitch rating for Mickey 17?
My Stitch rating is a solid 4.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was pretty long.
Yeah.
I think we both talked like there could have been some editing choices.
Oh, we could have cut 30 minutes off the top.
Yeah. That could have been different. I kind of wanted to know more about, they did a really good job like showing you like what Earth was and the world of the ship, but it's like I wanted a little bit more.
Yeah.
But like visually it was stunning. Mm-hmm. All the acting was incredible. Everything was great. Like they could have done more because I'm so invested in it.
Right.
I want more.
I almost felt like they were making this movie being like, no one's going to be into this. And then we very much were. And we're like, no, keep going.
Yeah.
Like I could have did more of this. I agree with you. I think my initial Stitch rating when I left the theater was like a 3. But then after I went home and thought about it more, I got myself to a 4. So I consider that a 4. Yeah, I think when I said cut 30 minutes, I meant like the end. I felt like when they were in the snow trying to figure out what the creepers wanted, it was like starting to run a bit long. Like, all right, let's get to it, you know? But overall, like the themes were fantastic. I loved the costumes. I thought everyone on the cast did fantastic. There was no weak links or anything. And I just think as, you know, this new film for Bong Joon Ho after the huge success of Parasite a couple years ago, this was such a great, like, you know, this man's got it.
He does.
Know? And he's going to keep doing more great stuff. And I'm just so excited. So that's a solid 4. Yeah. It was a good time.
I agree. I fully agree. I also think we agree on some other things.
Oh, hit it, Daniel.
The one costume to rule them all. Spencer, what's our one costume to rule them all?
You know, I don't remember what moment it was. I think it's just when they're exploring the snow planet. But I just love seeing Mickey in his like very disposable explorer outfit with, you know, the headwear and just seeing like all the tubing on the outside. Especially now, like hearing Kath and George's view on it all. I just thought it was such a great, seamless costume. Very like minimalist, but also like maximalist at the same time.
Yes.
Also, I just love like the kind of like subtle tribute to The Thing, which I know you haven't seen, but I kept thinking about that throughout the film. So yeah, it's just like it's solid. Like that is like what I think of when I think of Mickey 17 is that specific look.
Same. I think it's like the perfect example of what she was trying to do. Show what's on the inside on the outside, have it streamlined. And like you said, there's a lot on it, but it's all useful.
Yeah.
It's all to like keep them alive and keep them going. But also, I don't know if it was like the color, the way the hat falls on him, it felt very unique. And I can totally understand why this is the costume that's plastered all over the posters.
Yeah.
And it just, that's like where this movie is. Like that's Mickey 17.
Also feels a little goofy too, you know?
Yeah.
Feels like it's like, why are you wearing the hat like that?
Yeah.
You know, because of like sticking out. And it's like, oh, Mickey. Like so
Mickey.
So clumsy and silly and goofy, but you also like we've talked about, feel kind of like sad for him too, but then you're like very likable too, though. You know, you just want to give him a hug and be like, it's all right, fella. I'll help you with your hat. So that was such a fun one. And if you all enjoyed that as much too, if you're maybe interested in starting our own like crew when colonizing another planet, also you could email us at theartofcostume@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Then we'd love to hear your ideas.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, we had a good time getting into the sci-fi-ness of it all, and I think we might keep this train going for at least another episode. Guys, this is not a drill. We've been talking about having this next guest on since the beginning of time.
Yeah, yes, we have.
I can't believe it's actually happening. In our next episode, we're going to be joined by costume designer, Academy Award-winning costume designer, 2 awards. Ruth E. Carter's be joining us to talk about her new film, Sinners, which was directed by Ryan Coogler.
So excited. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. I'm such a big Ruth Carter fan.
You are.
I mean,
you might be her biggest fan.
I might be. She's just the coolest. I just think her career is just so inspiring. And I think her work on Black Panther is just, obviously won Oscars. I very well thought it should have. And I'm excited to see what she does next. And Sinners, I mean, a horror film. Yeah. That's right up my alley. So
it is.
Ruth, I'm so excited. Until then, I hope that you will all subscribe to our YouTube so you could see our beautiful faces on the big screen.
See what we're talking about.
See what we're talking about. We have all sorts of great photos that we put together for Daniel to project on our beautiful green velvet backdrop.
Yes.
Occasionally we have fun little props. We did not have little creepers, but who knows what we'll have next time. Anyways, thank you all for listening. This has been fun, and we'll see you in our next episode.
Bye-bye.